Welcome back to Green is Good. This is the Green Festival edition of Green is Good, and we're so excited to have with us today Stefanie Weiss. She's the author of Eco-Sexpert, the book. And welcome to Green is Good, Stefanie.
Hi, it's good to be here today.
Now, this is a first for us to have this topic on the show.
I promise to be PG.
But we're going to be PG. And before we start talking about Eco-Sex, I want to hear about the Stefanie Weiss story. How did you even get here? What's the journey? Did you grow up in a tree hugger household, or
No.
How did this happen?
Well, I've considered myself a greenie since my first Earth Day in the early 1990s when I was in college. That was when I discovered the movement and I became a vegetarian, and my entire life changed, and I started shopping at health food stores. And then I became a writer along the way. I've written several other books, and I write for a living. And then a couple of years ago, I started to think, well, I'm leaping ahead now into the book, but this is how just being green became Eco-Sex. This was my lifestyle. This is the way I was living my life. And I started to ask some of my friends who were in that green life, recycling, driving hybrids, doing all the right stuff, about their sex lives. And I found that, because I'm curious, and I found that people were not nearly as green as they were in their regular everyday life as they were in their sex life. So I thought, I really need to write a book about this.
Interesting. And so you grew up where?
I grew up on the island of Long Island, New York, not too far from here. And, although my parents were liberal, and in the 1960s they were kind of hippies, my father owned the first head shop on Long Island, by the way, the
No
Magic
way.
Cottage, yeah.
Where was
in
it?
Cedarhurst.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were sort of the cool dad. Let's be honest. Wait a second.
No, I had very cool parents.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
And that created the possibility for this journey, indeed.
Wow.
But there was no real green education in my house. It was a totally suburban, throwaway culture, meat eating, all of that stuff.
Which was very common to all of our experiences growing up in the United States.
Yes.
Before the sustainability revolution really took hold here.
Absolutely.
So I get it, and I grew up on Long Island also. So
Oh, yeah?
I totally, I feel you. I feel you. That's for sure. We have your wonderful book here. What year was this written?
So the research began in 2008. The book was released in 2010.
2010.
Yeah.
So how are the sales been? How has it been received? And what are some of the greatest hits and greatest tips you can share with our audience out there on Eco-Sex?
Yeah, well, what's terrific for me is that usually a book doesn't have a life of more, in terms of press, of more than a year, really, 6 months sometimes.
Right.
And I'm speaking at the Green Festival 5 years later. I'm always getting a lot of interest in this book because people are really curious. What does Eco-Sex even mean?
And sex doesn't go out of fashion. And Eco-Sex, sustainability is only growing as a movement.
Yes.
So really, you were ahead of your time, but it seems like more needed than ever, probably.
Well, it's more needed than ever because we're inching closer and closer to climate change really happening. It's already happening. Look at California.
Right.
So, for people that aren't necessarily going to become sustainability activists, who aren't going to make, who aren't going to really be in the movement as you and I are.
Right.
An entry like sex is a good place for them to start, right? So that was the other reason I wrote the book. I thought, wow, people who really don't care about the environment whatsoever, they probably care about their sex lives. So, maybe I can pull them into sustainability via sex.
And for our audience out there, we're with Stefanie Weiss. She's the author of Eco-Sex. You can find the book not only on Amazon.com.
Yes, indeed.
But also at www.ecosex.net. www.ecosex.net. So talk a little bit about some of the more interesting points in the book for our listeners. We love giving solutions on Green is Good.
Yeah.
What are some of the great takeaways that your readers have responded to you with and said, that really helped me. I really needed to know. I was too ashamed to ask, or I was too embarrassed to ask. Give some snippets of what's in the book to our audience out there.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the issue of shame because this is the number one issue that I'm dealing with when I begin to talk about sex in any space that I'm in. Everybody everybody feels a little bit uncomfortable at first, but then, I just gave a talk here at the Green Festival a little while ago, and people had, these expressions at first. They looked so afraid, but by the end of the talk, their faces had opened up and they felt more comfortable in asking questions and participating. So you really just have to introduce the topic to people and create that comfort zone, and then, it gets easier for people. Not everyone is, able to just talk about it like I am, like,
right.
Like it's nothing, because
right.
it's just, I've always been that way around sexual topics. So,
okay.
So in terms of great takeaways, PG ones, in the book there's an entire chapter dedicated to food. I mean, food, we use it for wooing the people that we're dating, and we sometimes use food in bed. I mean, it's used, in many different ways.
Right.
And so I have an entire chapter dedicated to aphrodisiac vegan raw foods, and
Whoa.
I have two famous chefs contributed recipes. Bryant Terry from the West Coast, from Oakland, he's a famous vegan chef. He has a lot of books, he's wonderful. He contributed a bunch of recipes to seduce a woman. And Sarma Melangalis, who has a restaurant here in New York called Pure Food and Wine, contributed all of the recipes how to seduce a man. So they're all
Whoa.
in there. Yeah, raw vegan recipes that people have really liked and used.
Right in there.
Right in there with the aphrodisiac ingredients specifically in each of them for each gender.
Okay, so now we've got the people together, the aphrodisiacs worked. What else? What other tips in the book in terms of being more eco-conscious are in there?
Well, I mean, I talk about everything. It's soup to nuts. From getting ready for a date, from the perfume that you put on as a woman,
Really?
the makeup that you use, the hair products that you use.
More sustainable products with less chemicals, everything, soup to nuts.
Yeah, soup to nuts,
Wow.
really. Like it's from courtship to consummation.
Wow. And can greening your sex life really improve your relationship, you think?
I think that it can. That's one of the things that I've heard from readers that I've really been happy to hear. People picked up the book kind of like on a lark, or because they were curious for themselves, and they said, just thinking about this stuff and, and paying attention to it and reading, a chapter here and there actually like improved my connection with my partner, and I got paraffin-free candles, and I lit them in the bedroom, and I got new bed sheets made of bamboo, or I made some of the recipes, or I brought in a new lube. I hope that's PG enough to talk about that.
Perfectly PG enough. Perfectly.
That is organic and
Yeah.
safe and body-friendly, and all of those things have helped to improve people's relationships. I also talk about tantra and intimacy and all of those issues, and birth control and STDs. It's all in there.
Speaking of birth control, what is the most sustainable form of birth control?
Oh, that is a really excellent, however, really complicated question.
Yeah.
I cover it in the book. It depends on a variety of factors. Where you are in your sexual life and your reproductive life.
Yeah.
Are you at the beginning and you're considering one day that you will have children, or have you already finished having children, or do you not want to have children at all? All of those different things. It also depends on whether you're in a monogamous relationship or whether you're casually dating more
Other
than one
people,
person.
right.
So it's broken down into all of those categories. Like, for instance, like men getting a vasectomy would be really the greenest thing that is available right now.
Yeah.
But it's not reversible. So, nothing else is needed except for that one operation, and then you're done, but you have to be finished having kids to do that.
Right,
So
right.
So a big part of my audience are people that are in casual relationships, maybe dating more than one person at a time. And, the good old latex condom is really the best. But you have to choose a brand that is conscious, socially conscious, and, sustainable. And I brought samples today of, they're not here at this desk.
Oh.
I gave them out during my talk, actually.
Okay.
From a company called Sustain.
We had them on the show when they were launching. We had the Hollanders on.
Oh, wonderful. Right,
They're
seventh
friends.
generation. It's all in the family,
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely. They came on before they launched, and they're just wonderful people. And it's a
Wonderful.
wonderful story, and it makes sense.
And they give, part of their profits to reproductive rights, which makes me so happy because I'm a huge advocate for that.
Right.
So,
That's awesome. So Sustain condoms.
Sustain condoms
So there
are
you
great.
go.
Yes.
It's so interesting. So you wrote this 5 years ago. You were ahead of the curve, it's obvious.
Well, I don't know if I was maybe a little bit, but it was kind of, I didn't really know that it was happening, but I
Right.
found when I started doing research that people were beginning to develop things. But when I wrote the book, there were really only like 3 conscious lube manufacturers that I could find that existed. And
Right.
now there are more than that.
Right.
And the bigger companies are beginning to, I mean, I don't, I certainly like wouldn't go out and buy KY jelly. It still has a lot of crap in it that's,
Right.
Unsafe. But there are more products available. That makes me very happy.
Stefanie, for our audience out there who just joined us, we've got Stefanie Weiss. She's the author of Eco-Sex, the book. It's right here in front of us. You can find the book on Amazon.com and at www.ecosex.net. You mentioned lubes, and of course we're going to keep it PG, but we're going to talk about the harmful chemicals. What should our audience members be avoiding when it comes to products that were historically available?
Yes.
And that, as we know with Sustain and other new products that have come out, there's great products that have come out, but what should our audience members be absolutely avoiding for better sex and also healthier sex for them?
Such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that question. So the thing about lube is that, if we're green, if we're,
Yeah.
sustainably oriented, we all know we're not supposed to put parabens on our body, right? Like that's like the go-to thing that a lot of people know about. Not everybody knows that, but
Right.
but more and more people know parabens, right? So that would be one thing that you would look for on a label. Like if you were in a drugstore, you were looking for a lube, you would, if anything had parabens on it, you put it back on the shelf. But one ingredient, which isn't necessarily a toxic ingredient in other products, glycerin. Now, this is something that I discovered when I was doing research for the book. Glycerin is actually something that you can have it in something else. It's not a toxic substance on its own, but in lube, it's actually very dangerous to a woman's body and can cause yeast infections and STDs. So that is one of the ingredients you want to avoid in a lube.
Really?
There are plenty of alternatives. I'm not exactly sure why lube companies, conventional lube companies started putting glycerin in their products, but you should never have glycerin in your products.
Good to know.
And my favorite lube brand is a brand called Blossom Organics. They're on the West Coast.
Okay.
They make a beautiful organic lube and they have a couple of different lines.
Gotcha. So now that we're here in 2015, 5 years since this book's been written, sustainability is a journey for us personally,
Yes.
but then also for different topics like sex.
Yeah.
Is it time? Are you thinking about doing a follow-up book, or are you going to do an addendum, or are you going to do a refresh, or what's going on?
At some point, if my publisher wanted me to,
Yeah.
there's a lot that I could update in
Right.
here because so many more things are
Yeah,
available
yeah,
now.
yeah.
And the eco-sexuality movement, I'm focused more on the holistic,
Right.
sort of like, day-to-day things that people can do to improve their sex lives and their relationship with their own body, really. That's where sex begins, right?
Right.
And really where sustainability begins as well. But eco-sexuality is broadening and opening up in a lot of different ways, in terms of the way that people have a sensual relationship with the earth itself, which I think is so important for us to do if we're to really, keep things going here on this planet for a long time.
Right. That's awesome. Well, any final thoughts? Because I want to leave the final thoughts to you before we say goodbye to our audience today.
I would just say always be eco-sexy.
and to buy the book, again, Stefanie's book, go to www.ecosex.net, Amazon.com. Obviously, you're a sustainability superstar, Stefanie, and we so appreciate you coming on Green is Good. You're truly living proof that green is good.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here. Thank
you. Thank you.